I guess we want to say to Hashem that 1 year testing us is enough. And now we should just deliver the miracle parts, and everything else, all the pain, all the suffering, all should be gone. I also want to add what we said many times, that the miracles we see are a result of the Tillim, the Tzedakah, the mitzvahs that people do. We don't see the wires connecting. There's no doubt that that's what we say in the Tillim. We're saying today that they come with their chariots and their horses, and we come with the name of Hashem, which is basically the Tillim that we say. So we'll start the good morning. We'll start the day once again with saying chapter Tillim. Would be nice if we could see exactly where the Tillim that we say in this room, which miracle happened as a result of it. But so far we're not privy to that yet. But there's no doubt that everybody's Tillim and every word of Tillim that every person says is having an impact. There's a story in the back of the Siddur. The back of the Siddur is a collection, good morning, collection of stories that are about Tillim. And one story, it's a long story with a lot of details, but it's a story about the fact that in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, he gave instructions to his children. They should get up every morning, I think like 4 o'clock in the morning, and they should say the whole Tillim. And they should keep saying it until the tells them to stop. And they continue doing this for a little bit over 2 months. And then one day he said to stop. And Tzemach Tzedek was very, very excited, very happy, very besimcha. It was Yutzes Kislev. And later the Tzemach Tzedek said that on Rosh Hashanah he saw that there was a decree, a really very, very devastating decree. And he tried everything he can. He didn't see that he's moving things. And then he saw his father-in-law, which is the Mittel Rebbe, and the Mittel Rebbe said that even though there's a decree, the decree has not been sort of signed. It's not 100%. And if we make an effort, you can still cancel it. And therefore, to do the Tillim. And Tzemach Tzedek later said that in the merit of the Tillim, that they said, this canceled the decree. And then he added, if you would know the power of Tehillim, how the words of Tehillim go up to the highest place in heaven, and the words of Tehillim go to Hashem's throne, and they're able to, and nothing could stop them, if you would know that power, you'd be saying Tehillim all day long. So let's not sort of dismiss what we do here this morning. We say one chapter Tehillim, but we have no idea, there's no doubt that the miracles we're seeing in Eretz Yisrael, we constantly hear about plans that they had that they didn't carry through. I mean, one of the things that we now know is that Hezbollah planned on this day, Rahman al-Islam, to do what was done last year, October 7th. And they would do it in the north. They had a whole plan. And when they were sitting and making the final arrangements for that plan, that's when the head of Hezbollah and all the other heads were eliminated. So these are the miracles that we're seeing. And we'll continue saying Tillim, and the Eibusher should help that the next Tillim we say is no longer just a request and a prayer. It's going to be thanking Hashem for the ultimate miracle. Lam Natseach, Mizma David, Yan Chadinoi B'Yoim Tzoros, Yisagev Choshem Elohei Yaakov, Yishlach Ezra Hamikodesh Umitzin Yisadeka, Yizkar Kolman Chesecha Va'iloscha Yidashna Sela, Yitin Lecha Chil Vavecha, Kol Atzoscha Yimale, Nerana Rabbi Shua Secha, V'Shem Eloheinu Nidger, Yimale Adonai Kol Meshali Secha, Ato Yodait Kishia Adonai Kishichon, Ya'anehu B'Shmei Kodshem, B'Gvuros Yesha Yeminek, Eile Varechev, Eile Basusi, Vanachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskim, Heimar Korav Navovu, Vanachnu Kamnu V'Neseidah, Adonai Yeshua, Amelech Yaneinu, V'Yem Kareinu. People have also noted, besides the fact that there are so many thousands of people that as a result of all this have come much closer to Yiddishkeit, chose to move to Israel, become part of the Jewish community in Israel. Netanyahu himself, who in a certain sense he represents the whole country, in his talks, he's constantly mentioning that we will win with the help of Hashem. A language which he didn't use before, because everyone was beginning to realize that it's what it is. It's with the help of Hashem. Okay, really, we finished the Geras HaTshuva. We finished chapter 12. We have to do the review. But before we do that, I want to do two things. One thing is to complete something which was at the end of chapter 12. Who would be kind enough to give this out? Thank you, Hazel. Thank you very much for that picture from Argentina. Yeah. That's really a very good picture. So the last thing in Tanya was, when the Alter Rebbe says that when it says, David HaMelech says the words Chatosi Negdi Samid, my sins are always before me, we shouldn't think it means Chas v'Shalom, that I have to always think about my sins. On the contrary, it's supposed to be b'simcha. So what does it mean? Now the Rebbe brings proof that the word negedi in Torah sometimes means it's far from me. In other words, it's in my head, but it's in my memory, but not conscious memory. It's in the back of my head, meaning to say I'm not consciously thinking about it. So then what's the point that it should even be sort of registered that it's in the back of my head? The Rebbe says there are a few benefits. One of them is that when something Chas v'Shalom happens, where a person is hurting, they would realize that this is part of a process of cleansing, of healing, that Hashem, because I did something in the past, Hashem is healing. So, and the Alter Rebbe says, what and why would that make a person not only not sad, but b'simcha? Because we'll realize that a little bit of tiny suffering down here would make up for hundreds of thousands, if not more than that, suffering for the same thing up there. And he gave the mashal with the sun. That when you look at the wall and you see the shade moving 1 inch, this is an indication that the sun up there moved hundreds and thousands of miles. But down here was 1 inch. So 1 inch equals thousands of miles up there. 1 inch of suffering equals tens and thousands of miles of suffering up there. That's Hashem's chesed. And then he added that we also see this in the positive. So I wanted to show you, this is in another place in Tanya, the author elaborates on this. This is part of the 5th volume of Tanya. You know, there are 5 volumes. What we learn, the Geras HaTshuva is volume 3. Then goes the Geras HaKodesh, the letters, that's volume 4. And at the end, there's another few essays, and that's called volume 5. The name for it is Kuntrus Achra, which means the final or the last pamphlet. But this is one that begins with these words. Look at page 710. So we're using the copy of Tanya from Lessons in Tanya, the most recent edition, and this is on page 710. In the set, there are 5 books. This is the 5th book. It's also like this: David, Zmiris, Kodesh Lahu. And you see in the English as David, you call them songs. The Gemara says that there was an incident that happened with David HaMelech, that he made a mistake, in halacha, but he made a mistake in something in halacha, which was so simple that even ordinary school children know this. How is it that he forgot? And the answer is, from above, they called him stumbled. It was some sort of a punishment for something that he did. Why did he do that was wrong? There's a pasuk where it says that the Torah to me is like a song. And really, but even though you're saying something very nice about the Torah, in a sense, you're downgrading the real greatness of Torah. So let's understand, what does it mean that it's a song, and why is it downgrading? So we're not doing the whole chapter, of course, just the part that relates to us. Page 711. Hinek, the Zohar says, Shvacha the Uraisa Uranona. The praise of the Torah and its song. That's how the Zohar describes the Torah as a song. What kind of praise is this that we're praising Hashem? And what's the song here that we're singing of praise? What are we saying? This is asur and this is mutter. This is permissible, this is prohibited. So what makes that into a song? What's the praise? This is similar to Magodlu Masech Havaya Meidam Kameshvei. There's another pasuk in Tehillim where it says, Hashem, how great are your works and how deep are your thoughts, which means if you look at the creation, you can, the more and more you look into creation, the more you're excited, and you see the greatness and the depth of Hashem's creation and Hashem's what Hashem created. In fact, we know that people today, and one of the main reasons why people today have issues with believing in Hashem is mostly since this new people came to learn and study science, and they explain everything scientifically. So everything is explained according to science, not about Hashem. But the truth is, if a person would study science with the premise that I believe that everything is Hashem, the more they study science, the more the mind will just be blown away to pieces from the greatness of Hashem. In other words, when a person will look into the human body and think about the structure of the human body and the way everything works, and see the wisdom and the brilliance that's found in one cell, and the wisdom and the brilliance that's found in the DNA. And remember, all the scientists today, with all their wisdom, still haven't figured it out. But they see clearly that there's wisdom and brilliance, genius in the DNA, tiny little tiny thing in the body. And the more you learn about it, if you approach it with Emunah and Hashem, then you're more you're more excited about the greatness of Hashem. So just like we see the greatness of Hashem in creation, we see the greatness of Hashem in Torah. In what way? Not just the wisdom, but something more specific. In a night that's known, this is the part that's related to our chapter. All the worlds, the upper worlds and the lower worlds, Tuluyim, the Digduk, Mitzvah Achaz, they all depend on the meticulous performance of a single mitzvah. So when we say the word, the worlds, how many worlds are we talking about? Really, there are infinite worlds. In other words, when we say there are 4 worlds, we think in our mind, oh, there are 4 levels: Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Sila. But the truth is, in each world, there are infinite levels and infinite worlds. To give an example, how many levels are there in this physical world? How many categories are there? 4. Daimim, which is inanimate. Tzemeach, the plant kingdom. Chai, the animal kingdom. And Medaber, the human kingdom. In each kingdom, we're doing this. In each kingdom, how many categories are there? In the plant kingdom, it's infinite, with plants and trees, flowers, and all sorts of things that I don't even know there's a number to it. How many species of animals are there? Better and worse, higher and lower, animals that are more useful or less. Again, infinite. And how many categories are there in humans? Right now, there's supposed to be 8 billion people in the world. No 2 people are equal, not in intelligence, not in midas, not in their talents. And of course, even in daimon, things that have no life to it, there's also the difference between sand and one kind of sand, and soil and rocks and water, and so many things that they're daimon. So when we say there are 4 categories, in each category itself, there are infinite categories. So when we say there are 4 worlds, really in each world there are tens and hundreds or maybe infinite different levels and infinite different things. Imagine from the human body, there can be DNA, which is infinite. I don't know, there's numbers of how many details there are. Lamaila in the source, there are also infinite angels and infinite souls and infinite things in these spiritual worlds. And when we do something, that's what he's saying now. All these things in the four worlds, they all depend on a little tiny move that I make. Derech Mashal, for example, in my carbon kosher, if a person brings a carbon, and the carbon is kosher, Nasa Yichud Elyon, this creates a supernal union in the spheres. And all the worlds are elevated, and they get this life force, and they get the sustenance from this spiritual source. And it's a result of the carbon that was brought. And there's a huge difference in all the worlds now because they got this, whatever they got from the carbon. However, turn the page 712. Im Shina, if he changed something not according to halacha, for example, all he did was, he did everything exactly the same he's supposed to. But instead of taking the blood in his right hand, he took it in his left hand. Little change like that. Or he took it in a vessel, but the vessel, for whatever reason, wasn't kosher. The vessel has certain qualifications that make it valid, and certain things make it invalid. Or there was something interfering, something separating. For example, if he was holding the vessel with a napkin, you're not Yates? Or for example, he was standing on the floor and there was something between his feet and the floor. He's not Yates. Or he's wearing the special garments of a Kohen and there's something between his body and the garments. Not Yates. So a little tiny thing like that, even though everything else is done precisely the way it's supposed to be done, Azayin is battle, aliyas, all these worlds can go up. And all the life force and all the sustenance that they would have received, they can get. Which makes a difference on infinite levels. The same thing with tefillin. When you put on kosher tefillin, mizgalin, meichen el yoinin, v'zeir ampen v'nukvan. This brings down, using the language in Kabbalah, supernal intellect of Zer, Ampen, and Nukva, and that's the source of life to all the worlds. But b'digduk echad, one little detail in the tefillin that's not in order, nifsolim, the tefillin become puzzle, and that's why we have to always check our tefillin. In fact, according to halacha, a man must check the tefillin at least twice in 7 years. And beyond halacha, the Rebbe instituted that we should check tefillin every year. Most people do it in the month of Elul. Check the tefillin and the mezuzahs. So if a person checks the tefillin and there's a little something, like you said the other day, imagine there's a letter, one letter in the tefillin that the ink fell off, faded, and you can't see it anymore. And there's just a little line which is white instead of being black. The whole tefillin are puzzle. And what happens when it's puzzle? Again, all this depth and all this spiritual sustenance that's supposed to come doesn't come. And the same is also what happens when a person violates the leisas. And therefore, page 713. If a person would stop and think and meditate on Magadlu Masi Hashem, how amazing are the greatness of Hashem's work. That a multitude of worlds, talking about hundreds and thousands and millions and billions and trillions of details between worlds and everything that's in those worlds, and they all exist, but all of them, kulam b'telim, they're all dependent on digduk echad medigdei Torah. One little detail is something we learn in the Torah. So here we see the greatness of Hashem's wisdom. That b'digduk kal, and one little tiny thing that I do properly, Eilim kol eilim, all the worlds could be elevated, and they get their chayis and they get their sustenance. And if not, lehepach chas v'shalom, the opposite happens. Which, by the way, helps. And like people don't understand when it comes to mitzvahs. People say we understand the general idea of the mitzvah, but the details, something I can't understand. I remember I once went to someone's house, put up a mezuzah. He was ready for it, so I came down, so I put up the mezuzah. Where do you put the mezuzah? On the doorpost. I asked him if he has a ruler. He says, why do you need a ruler? Because the mezuzah is supposed to be at the top third of the doorpost. So I want to measure where the top third is. He started laughing. I'm telling you, as if I made the biggest joke. I don't think, what do you think about it? He said, you can measure, like, it really makes a difference if it's the top third or the bottom third. Little does he know what other differences make. But yes, if it's too low, you're not yaitza. All these things don't happen. If it's 1 inch higher, then things happen the way they're supposed to happen. Yeah.
So even if it's too high for you to reach,
We'll leave that for the halacha teacher. But generally speaking, it should be either shoulder high, or it should be, if it's a regular doorpost like this, it should be the bottom of the top third, which means divide the doorpost in 3, and it's the bottom part of the top third. It usually will turn out to be close to the average height of a shoulder.
Give me the ruler.
What? He gave me the ruler at the end, yeah.
Did you start carrying a ruler from then on?
Not necessarily, no. But we have rulers in here today. The thing we learn from this, by the way, is of course how not to dismiss the details. There's sometimes people, even people who are from, they observe Torah, they observe mitzvahs. When it comes to the detail, like, come on, don't be so petty and this, that. I mean, the general idea, the mitzvah. No, the details could make the whole difference. Whether it's, now some details could actually make it kosher or trade. Some details could make it, permissible or not permissible, whether it was valid or not valid. Some details maybe not make it disqualified, but they could still make a difference. It's like having a phone that doesn't work, it's just dead. Or having a phone and it's there's a lot of static and it's not clear, and the image is not clear and the voice is not clear. So it's not the same thing with these things. A little tiny detail can make the whole difference in how pure and how clear the sustenance comes from above.
Give me a mic with all the details.
What?
Give me a mic with all the details. Detail is all important.
Exactly. That's also one of the things about minhagim. A lot of times people dismiss, minhagim, it's only a minute, it's not a big deal, to do this, to do that. But the truth is, minhagim, they could make a huge difference, because everything we do, begashmis, has an effect on all these levels of baruchnis, except some things, it will either make it or break it, and other things will enhance the mitzvah, but also it'll enhance it on a very big scale. In the back, in the book, in the workbook that you have, there's a sikha there from the Rebbe.
What page is it?
This is page, all the way at the end of the workbook, page 212. No. The workbook, just the last page. You don't need a number. All the way at the end, yeah. It's a sikha where the Rebbe says that in Tanya, you find 3 explanations what a person should think about when chas v'shalom there's suffering. So I just marked them off as 1, 2, 3. And then the Rebbe adds, and then there's the explanation of the way it is based on the Zohar, and that has more of an advantage than all these explanations. One thing is, which is found in Tanya, the number 1, which is in the first part of Tanya, in chapter 26. The Alter Rebbe says, let's read it. In the first part of Tanya, the Rebbe counsels to deal with suffering by accepting it with joy. And by doing so, one will merit in the future to come that the present affliction will be revealed as visible and manifest good. However, this is something to which one must wait for the future to come. In other words, this would be like the muscle of a person who goes through an operation, which on one hand, it's painful and it's suffering. But on the other hand, in the future, weeks later, sometimes Chas v'Shalom, months later, they're now going to be so much healthier than they were before. But you have to wait. In one chapter in Egeretz HaKodesh, the Rebbe offers advice in a different way. One should examine his conduct and consider the situation in terms of a great king personally washing the filth of his only child. In other words, if we look at suffering, that this is Hashem doing it to me out of his love, of course, it's a very hard thing to see that way, that it's his love and he's also cleansing me, then the fact that I recognize Hashem's love will make me feel love for Hashem, and that'll bring Hashem's love to be revealed more openly, and whatever is negative will go away. With this approach, you don't have to wait for the future. It can come right away, but requires a lot of contemplation. And to arouse love for Hashem, while a person's suffering, they should feel love for Hashem. That's quite a level. Then there's a third explanation. The number 3 really should be at the second paragraph. In the second chapter of Egeretz HaKodesh, the Rebbe advises one to realize the suffering is kind of a test. Man is tested to see whether he desires. Now the Rebbe does not bring the explanation that's given here, but maybe that's connected to number 2, that it's part of a cleansing process. In the second chapter, the Alter Rebbe says, one must realize suffering is a kind of a test. Man is tested to see whether his desires are essential for mundane things and physical life. When overcoming this trial, then it will be evident and manifest good. In other words, it's only a test, and Hashem waits to see if the person will overcome the test, then whatever is negative will become positive. So he says this last advice has the advantage, you don't have to wait for the future. You don't have to arouse any kind of love for Hashem. All you need is just to sort of not to recognize that this is a test. Because the other way, you have to wait until you get that love, you'll still be suffering. However, over here, as soon as one is overcoming, it gets rid of the suffering. Nonetheless, even here, a person has to overcome a trial. It's still something to do. Then there's the approach of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The advantage of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the hidden secrets of Torah is that one need not to wait for the future, A. B, one need not to wait for an arousal of love. C, a person doesn't need to overcome any test or trial. But from the perspective of Pnimis Torah, one interprets and reveals everything in the terms of evident and manifest good. The Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, when something happens, I should perceive it as this is really Hashem's bracha. It's hidden, but it's really Hashem's bracha. And if I, in my head, consciously perceive it as a bracha, then it will become a bracha openly. So in this case, you don't have to wait for the future, you don't have to go through the other things, but immediately, as soon as I perceive it that way, then it becomes that way. So this is the approach of the Rebbe. That's the thing of traveling with Zayngut and also things in a positive way. And this is, of course, something which is relevant to October 7th. So understand, even though it's a very, very painful thing, and the more you think about what's going on, especially in the negative, it's very painful, but you don't have to meditate on the negative. It's enough what we know without meditating. People like to really go into it and look at pictures, and it doesn't really do any good, I think, for most people. It brings us down. But we're supposed to see that whatever is happening is really brachas of Hashem, even though we don't see it. But if I interpret it as a brachas and I see it as a bracha, and that's the way I perceive it in my head, that's the way it's going to become out of the open. I remember during the Yom Kippur War, the Rebbe spoke a lot about simcha, being the simcha, and people were saying, how could you be dancing? There's people out in the war there, there's people falling, unfortunately. How could you be the simcha? It's a good question, but if you realize that this is a way of stopping the war and changing it, then you realize I can be the simcha. The simcha means that we want the hidden good that's here, which is really Hashem's good, should be revealed out in the open. Okay, let's finish the review of what we didn't do, and then we don't have that many days to learn in the morning. We have 2 days this week. Tomorrow is a special program, so we have Wednesday and Thursday, and then after Yom Kippur, so we'll use those days to continue the Yom Tov Apiksidis. We'll go more into Sukkot Apiksidis and Simchas Torah Apiksidis, Shmei Atzeres Apiksidis, and so on. I think we did until chapter 9. No, we did chapter 10. We didn't do chapter 11, 11 and 12. By the way, we've been talking about this in class numerous times, that the Rebbe emphasized that in our generation, our Avodah is tshuva ilah, which means tshuva with simcha. And one of the things the Rebbe brings into that is that the Frierdiker Rebbe once said, it's also in Hayom Yom. It's interesting, it happens to be on the day of Gimel Tammuz, that if a Yid, even as much as sighs, he gives a sigh about his situation, that alone is already a tshuva. And again, let's remember, there's a halach in Shulchan Aruch. This is in Shulchan Aruch, that if a man marries a woman, and there's a certain condition in the marriage, then if the condition is not satisfied, then the marriage is canceled. It's not a marriage. So if he says, for example, he's marrying this woman on the condition, he tells her to marry on the condition that I'm a wealthy person. Or she says, I'm doing it because I know you have a lot of money. Then you find out he has no money, just need to get. It's not a marriage. The whole marriage is on the condition that he has money. And what if the marriage is on the condition that he's a tzaddik? When we say tzaddik, we don't mean tzaddik like the Tanya tzaddik. We mean just a fully righteous person. If she says that, the Gemara says the kedushin is in doubt. She needs a get. What kind of doubt is there? We knew that a minute before he wasn't that kind of person. He wasn't from in certain areas. How could there be a doubt? And the answer is because tshuva is just a thought in the head. If I think Hashem, I'm not going to do it again. So you don't know what he was thinking. And therefore, it could be that he had the proper thought. So we see from this that even according to halacha, tshuva could be just in a second. And the Rebbe said there is no person that didn't even have a thought thinking, I feel bad that I made this mistake or that mistake. So everybody did tshuva. Now it's tshuva ilah. So one time they were sitting by the table on Yom Tov. The Rebbe used to eat his Suda meals upstairs in 770. And he's in the earlier years by the table of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Just like every family, they invite their married children. So the Rebbitzin of Hamedina, she used to invite the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin to eat by the same table where they ate during the lifetime of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And together with them, she would invite a few older Hasidim to join. There were 2 separate tables, 2 separate rooms. The Rebbitzins were in one room, the men were in another room. And sitting by the table, people sometimes would ask questions. And one of the main people that asked the question was the Rebbe's brother-in-law. So an opportunity, it was more casual, and he would ask the Rebbe questions. So one time I asked him about this, that the Rebbe keeps saying that, and now the Avodah is tshuva ilah. Is there a source for that, or this is the Rebbe's own sort of initiative? The Rebbe said, it's my feeling, it's my own thing. So clearly this is the Rebbe's chiddush, this is the Rebbe's novelty that comes from the Rebbe, that this is what we do in our generation. So someone showed me an amazing mimer, never saw it before. What the Rebbe brings from the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's based on something, that's a lot of details to it, but the bottom line is that the Frierdiker Rebbe says there has to be 2 kinds of avodas in children. One is to take away, and one is to add. That's the source. And he explains, you have to take away the negative, and you have to add the positive. So Rebbe says, but being that there is no negative, so all you have to do is just work on adding, not and take away the negative. it's in a mimer. Then the Rebbe said, but however, one could say, what do you mean there's no negative? Of course there's negative. This was negative, that was negative. So the Rebbe says, the Yetzer Hara comes along and says there is negative. That's what you have to take away. That Yetzer Hara that tries to convince you that you have something negative, that's the negative thing that you have to get rid of. So basically, like I said, the idea that we could be doing this kind of tshuva is a result of all the thousands of years of Yidden doing their avodah. We come to a place where it's like the little midget on the shoulders of the giant. Then we now are up to the place where we do tshuva, and that's where we're holding. So let's see, page 11. How should one feel about the tshuva being accepted after doing tshuva? Right. When you ask a person for forgiveness, you can always doubt, did they really forgive me? When they said yes, were they sincere? Were they just saying it to make me feel good? With Hashem, the Alter Rebbe said we should be absolutely certain that I'm forgiven. Why should one assume that Hashem will forgive them, even if one continues to sin, and then again asks for forgiveness, and repeats this pattern hundreds of times? Right. Forgiveness comes from Hashem's benevolence, from Hashem's compassion, and His attributes are infinite. Infinite means that there's no limit to Hashem's compassion. Even if you ask 1,000 times or more, it's all the same. In fact, there's no difference between 1,000 times and one time, because that's what infinite is. In what way is it positive to never forget a person's avera? There are two answers to that question. Good. What's the other one? No, the other one's what we just spoke about. That if chas v'shalom something happens, I'll realize that it's because Hashem is enhancing the process of my cleansing. Again, I did tshuva, but if Hashem is still washing me, He's enhancing the process of cleansing. Remember, we explained that even if something is clean, but then you can increase or enhance that process, more refined and more refined and more refined. What is the main point of Perek Yud Aleph? So I guess, what does it say in the beginning? The main point of Perek Yud Aleph is that after doing tshuva, one should feel certain that they're forgiven, and therefore be b'simcha. In the back of a person's mind, they should remember they sinned and the benefits of that, but not chas v'shalom to always harp on, I did something and I'm no good. And the difficult with that is because it looks like it's so spiritual. It sounds more like the Yetzer Tov speaking to you, but really it's the Yetzer Hara in disguise. And then we have Perek Yud Beis, the last chapter. Okay, so this is the things we just spoke about. I'll let you fill in the answers to that. And Mitzvah Hashem, when we continue with this class, which will be Wednesday morning, we will go more into Sukkot Apich Sidis, and then Shmini Atzeres Apich Sidis, and Simchas Torah Apich Sidis. And I hope we'll still have enough time for everything. Okay, that's love for everybody. How was everybody's Rosh Hashanah here?
Beautiful.
That's your question.